like to call this January 20th, 2022 meeting of the Parks, Recreation, Greenway, and Advisory Board to order. Good to see everyone and Happy New Year. First, if we have anyone here from the public who would like to make any comments, this is the time to do that. You can have 3 minutes.
Yep. If anyone is joined from the public that would like to make a comment, please use the raise hand function in Zoom, and I'll ask you to mute yourself. Give it a second here. All right, there's no one that has comment.
Okay, very good. Well, then we will just roll right into the Raleigh Youth Council liaison representative. I see Sydney. Hi there.
Yes, hello everyone. I am the chair of RYC and I'm here to give you all some updates on what we've been working on. This past Monday, actually not this past Monday, but on the second Monday of January, we had a goal setting meeting where we all made vision boards and we set some personal goals for ourselves and some RYC goals. And some of the RYC goals that we have for this year that kind of stood out are like members saying they want to increase community service and involvement in the council and wanting to host a conference, which leads me into my next point. We will be hosting the spring conference on April 23rd. It is the first in-person conference that we've had since January of 2020. And we're really excited about it because it gives us the opportunity to highlight Raleigh's assets and bring teens from all over North Carolina. And we would love any support that you guys could provide if that is something you are interested in. And the next thing is the Garden Corps program, which was offered to RYC. And it is held by the Food Bank of Central and Eastern North Carolina, where teens can learn how to create personal gardens and then cook from those foods. So it is 12 weeks and they meet every Thursday, and we've had some interest expressed from the council, but this is also available to teens outside of the council and they can sign up on RecLink. This also inspired us to have our food drive month. So we are collecting canned foods from members to donate to the Food Bank of Central and Eastern North Carolina. And at our meeting this coming Monday, we will be communicating some job opportunities for teens that will be available within the city of Raleigh. So we'll have representatives and some guest speakers, and we will follow up that meeting with talking about interviewing tips, mock interviews, and effective ways to build your resume. So those are all of our updates.
Wow. You've been busy. That's awesome. Thank you for that update. Can I follow up on that spring conference? Can you tell us a little more about that, what that is, who's invited, what the purpose is? And you mentioned if we could help in some way, and I'm sure a lot of us would love to, but in what way could you use help?
Right. Okay, so the spring conference, so usually we have 4 conferences throughout the year, but the first 2 have been virtual, and the last one, the spring one that we are hosting, is always a sort of reward, like an award situation, and like we vote on like who's the most outstanding council. So it's a big kind of celebration kind of event. And we bring in councils from all over North Carolina, so like Goldsboro, Fayetteville, Cumberland, cities from like all around that have their own councils as well. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds great. Does anyone
What's
have any
the
other?
date?
Yeah.
The date?
So it's April 23rd.
And so the conferences are leadership opportunities for the teams, and the councils come from all over North Carolina. And so we have the opportunity to plan some type of leadership activity for the teams while they're here. So we do some team building or different activities, just depending on what will be allowed Obviously, we've got some restrictions still, and so we want to play it very safe, but we will be working to kind of create some opportunities for the teens. So there may be opportunities for the advisory board to support us in those ways with some of those leadership opportunities when the teens are here. So we can talk more about it in the future as we kind of plan out what that looks like.
Sounds great. Good deal. And the, was it Garden Core program? Is that what it was called? Okay. That sounded really interesting too. That's great. Well, thank you for that report. Does anyone else have any comments or questions for Sydney? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to our next agenda item. We have the consultant, sorry? Yep.
There was a hand up and it's gone off my screen now, but
Oh, shoot. Okay.
It was me. It was
Okay.
me. So I just wanted to help a little bit with the Garden Corps program. And Carmen, if I get out of my lane, please bring me back in. The Garden Corps program is something we started pre-COVID. It was a partnership with Housing and Communities and Sustainability and the Food Bank and our active adult program in teens. And so what we did was we developed a program working down Carmen, the Food Bank right there on Capitol Boulevard, where we had young people working with older people and the master gardeners. And it was really getting into some urban agriculture, but also being some cross-generational or intergenerational programming working together, and also bringing in Wake County, the master gardeners. So really a cool partnership that came out of the strategic plan. And if we can get this virus behind us enough to where we can get back close to people, we're excited to bring that back on. Carmen, did I mess up?
No, that was great. And we also are providing transportation from the St. Monica Teen Center. So if you know teens in the area that are interested that can get to the Teen Center, we are providing transportation to participate in this program. We also will allow teens to meet us there where we can, work with them directly from the food bank. So we are open to helping teens get involved in any way we can. The information is all on RecLink, so anyone's interested in signing up, please go and check it out and reach out to the numbers listed there, and we can give you more information and figure out how to get the teens involved. So.
Great.
Out of curiosity, is there a particular reason why this is only geared towards teens and not a larger age group?
I'm not exactly sure how the demographic was selected originally. When I say teens, I'm talking ages 12 all the way to 17. So there is a wide range of students that can participate. I'm not exactly sure why they haven't taken it to a younger age. It could be that they're looking to maybe expand it in the future, but currently we're offering it for ages 12 to 17 years old.
I'll help you there, Carmen. So originally it was, when we first piloted it, it was really, again, from an intergenerational programming perspective, how do we get our active adults that we have both in Parks and Recreation and Housing and Communities working together with our teens. It also created some organic mentoring opportunities. As the program grows, it's really dependent on capacity, where we're doing it with the food bank and also with the Master Gardener program. So it was really starting to gain some momentum before COVID really shut us down. So we were getting ready to go into our next season in that spring of 2020. So our hope would be for us, or programmatically, is we could begin to introduce into what is our CAPS program, which is our community after school program. And then the other one that we do have some limited potential for is transportation. As Carmen referenced, we have one designated point. We can pick up the teens at the teen center and bring them from there. But it is not something that always will be limited. It's just that's how we started out the program.
Thank you both.
Very good. Thank you. So we'll move on then to, unless there's any other comments, I don't see any, to the Greenway Master Plan update. Chris, I'll just hand it over to you.
Sure, thank you. Thank you all for having me back tonight. The last update that we provided to Parks Board was in this past October, and at that time we had just finished our third phase of public outreach. So we gave an overview of everything that had been done up until that point and some of the points that we had been hearing through our third phase of public outreach. So tonight we are going to give you a presentation on the changes that we've made to the draft plan as a result of what we heard in that phase, as well as what we've heard through some of the other groups that we've presented to and obtained endorsements from between then and now. And then at the end, we'll be looking for your endorsement as well So we have Jared Draper and Henry Cohen with Tool Design with us tonight, and I will turn it over to them.
Thanks, Chris. Good evening to everyone. Thanks for having us. Hopefully you are all staying warm. We're going to run through some of these updates, and I will just say, if you've heard us do this song and dance before, there's new stuff. Beverly and Christina, there's new things. So we will try to keep it moving, but we do want to give you an overview of kind of everything that's been going on since the last time we all met in October. So can I just get confirmation, Chris, you can see my full screen slide? Perfect. Thank you. All right. So as Chris mentioned, we are really going to be focusing on what those updates were, what we heard from the public in that third round of engagement. I'll let Henry talk us through that. Here's kind of where we're going tonight with those updates. We will talk a little bit about next steps right before we do an endorsement vote, and I'll send you some information via the chat on how to do that. Just one new thing that's kind of been added to this presentation is just a reminder that, you know, the CAG, the Capital Area Greenway Plan update really does support the original intent of that 1976 plan, where we were thinking about conservation, recreation, and how people move. And I think what's really important is that as we are now in 2022, that we're really thinking about how it meets the needs of those that are here today, residents and visitors, but also looking forward to the future of what people may need. A little bit of a recap of where we were. Chris did this really well for me already, so I don't need to spend time here. We talked about phase 3, and we also discussed some of the updates that we were going to make, and now we've made them. So here we are tonight to tell you kind of where we stand with the most recent draft update. But first, I'm going to turn it over to Henry. He's going to talk us through first what we heard in phase 3, and then he's going to kind of draw back a little bit and discuss some bigger themes of what we heard overall in public engagement. So Henry, go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Jared. Yeah, so phase 3 was the phase taking place in the summer and the fall, and our Parks Board meeting in October was a big part of that. And so exciting to be able to look back on that. We also had 3 virtual open houses in this phase, and then also an online survey. And just again, this was really our reveal and refine phase. So sending the full draft plan out and really being able to hear feedback from folks after they had a look at that plan. You can go to the next slide. So our online survey had over 1,200 participants. It's really exciting. It was advertised really heavily on social media and lots of yard signs all over the CAG system. And we were able to reach a lot of folks who this was their first time ever giving feedback to the plan. So 68% of respondents said that this was their first time, which is really exciting. And we also got some really valuable feedback on the prioritization criteria that we were using for new trails. And over 70% of the respondents said they felt that the prioritization criteria would ensure a fair and balanced approach to the project implementation. Respondents also really re-emphasized the importance of balancing between constructing new trails and then also reinvesting in our existing system. And when we asked them what was most important for the future success of the CAG system, you can see is pretty much almost an exactly even split right there between building new trails at 42% and then maintenance and operations at 39%. You can go to the next one. We also got some feedback from that survey on amenities. And you all know there's a really wide variety of amenities that are important to all different kinds of trail users. But signage and wayfinding, being able to find trails, know where you're going, know where you're getting to, that was the most important thing for about half of our respondents in the survey. You can go to the next one. This slide, there's a lot of information on this graphic, so don't maybe try to take it in all at once, but this is a 2-page spread from the plan that we just recently added that really tries to summarize the entire all 3 phases of community engagement and public input. And so down here, kind of on the left side, you can see that every part of those 3 phases, each survey and event and meeting, all of those really led to our categories for recommendations that you can see down here at the bottom in the blue. And then over here on the right side, we have some themes from public input from all 3 phases of looking back, almost over 2 years ago now to now, looking back of what were kind of the main things that we kept hearing again and again. And so we're going to go through those just kind of one by one briefly. You can go to the next one. The first, by and far, biggest takeaway that we had from all 3 phases was that people love the CAG system. They love the greenways. People loved getting outside, being able to use these with their families, biking, walking, running. And they were just excited that this plan update was happening and really excited about the work going on. You can go to the next one. These other phases, these other themes are not in a particular order, but one thing that we did hear throughout all 3 phases was that ensuring that trails can serve as transportation corridors that connect people to where they live and work and play is a valuable goal of the CAG system. And today we know that a lot of folks primarily enjoy the recreational and the environmental benefits of the Greenway system, but we heard a lot of excitement about this goal of being able to use the trails in the future to connect to neighborhoods, connect to parks, and even more destinations around Raleigh. And so ensuring that these trails can connect folks to where they live and work, they'll add even more to kind of the amazing, beautiful natural, recreational, and natural benefits of the system that it already provides today. You can go to the next theme. Another big theme was hearing about the importance of working with the development system and the development community. We all look around here and see that there's a lot of development happening in this area. And we heard from a lot of folks that working with developers to construct new trails and protect the existing corridors that we have is going to be increasingly important as the city grows. You can go to the next one. We also heard that constructing new trails is important to address key gaps in the system. I think some of the most common feedback that we hear and that I'm sure you have also heard is, wouldn't it be great if there was a trail here? Or wouldn't it be, awesome if I could get from here to here if only there was a trail? And so from the beginning of this project all the way through, there's just been a lot of excitement about growing this system and adding new trails. You can go to the next one. Like from the most recent survey you saw right up there with building new trails is also the importance of prioritizing the maintenance of the existing system. And we know that there are spots with slippery bridges or there's areas that flood or get overgrown. And hearing from the public through this whole process was really helpful in identifying where these areas might be and sharing how we can maintain the capital area greenway system and really add to that user experience. Our next big theme that we saw was making the Greenway system safe and accessible for all trail users is essential. And so as the system grows and becomes more and more popular, more and more people are using these trails and the types of people are becoming more and more diverse. And so we heard from a lot of folks about how important it is to always know that people can feel safe and welcomed on the Greenway system. You can go to the next one. Last theme here that I'll share is that adding more signage and wayfinding at key decision points along the trails, and especially at our on-street connections, will help both our residents and visitors. And especially newer users to the system shared that it can be easy to get lost sometimes, and that there are a lot of opportunities for signage and wayfinding about nearby community destinations or nearby parks and amenities. And so we heard a lot about opportunities for signage and communication about repairs and maintenance, and also about cool places that people can get to from the trails. And I will hand that back over to Jared.
Sounds good. Thanks, Henry. Some additional changes that we made for the update were really to emphasize the regional connectivity for the capital area greenway system. We know that this system is part of so many other things, and we wanted to make sure that those things were emphasized. One being the work that Wake County is doing in the surrounding communities. The other is the Triangle Bikeway, which is really a kind of a newer project that's come online and kind of gotten a lot of momentum, and how the capital area greenway system really does play an essential role, not only in that connection that's regional, but also some what I would say are super regional connections with the Mountain to Sea Trail as well as the East Coast Greenway. And so knowing that the capital area Greenway system is really a critical component as part of some of the alignments that are happening in our region and beyond is really important. And we wanted to make sure that those were emphasized as part of the plan update. This is a brand new slide, brand new information that we've added based on some really great feedback, making sure that we can show a little bit more information about trails and open space corridors. This was added very recently to the plan as well as into this presentation to highlight how we have existing trails that go along open space corridors, but we also have existing trails and proposed trails that do not necessarily follow those all of the time. And so hopefully by adding in some of this information, add some clarity, because the capital area Greenway system is comprised of both those trails as well as those open space corridors. So I will just give some kudos to Beverly for comment on our last Greenway committee meeting that really did push this forward and made sure that it got into the plan to add in that information, some clarity. With that, we did clarify the definition around open space corridors. We included some more information around the environmental significance of what they have been and what they are in the future. You know, along open space corridors and greenway easements, currently there's over 3,900 acres that are being preserved. And obviously that is a huge component of the work that is being done with the capital area greenway system. And so just really important for us to highlight that and make sure that there's clarity as other recommendations are focused on using some of this terminology into the Unified Development Ordinance and other documents moving forward. Additionally, we wanted to emphasize and highlight some of the flexibility that's really captured in this plan as a vision moving forward. We know that there's not a check that's going to be written to implement every single one of these trails right away. And so we need to be thinking about how do we move forward in a way that is context sensitive and is really responding to the needs of residents and visitors. And so we wanted to kind of really focus in on how investments made over time, and then give the resources and the tools and the methodology to make those decisions at the city staff level, and really with input from the community as time goes on. Additionally, we updated some graphics for the Oak City Trail classification, making sure that it did start to match some of the existing high capacity trails that we have in our system today, and then also reflecting what something might look like in the future. One of the most recent updates we did, along with the cross sections, is actually update the description of the Oak City Trails, again, based on recent comments, to make sure that the terminology around high capacity is included, because it really does start to give you a better sense of why these trails are included in that Oak City classification. In addition, we did some refinement around kind of some language of recommendations, making sure that the city has the right tools to evaluate any other changes that may be associated with these trails, including hours of operation and other items, to recognize that there are a variety of contexts across the capital area Greenway trail network that need to be considered as we move forward. When it comes to amenities, we added in system-wide amenity spacing. This goes above and beyond what was in the capital area Greenway planning design guide for certain elements. We know that because there's some limitations around being in the floodplain, some of these may not meet these spacing requirements, but we did decide that it was important to set some goals around certain amenities like bike parking, restrooms, receptacles, seating, drinking fountains, as well as bicycle repair. And so really good information as the city moves forward with implementation, and also thinking about budgeting for items along the existing and as it's being those trails are being reinvested in. The last new section, if you have seen it since October, of the kind of what I would say is the body of the plan update, is a glossary of terms and abbreviations. There are a lot of terms in here. And so what we've done is kind of anything that could have seemed new, we wanted to add a definition, as well as kind of note any of the abbreviations that may be used in the body of the plan or the appendix, any one of the appendices. In one of the appendices, Appendix F, we did add a trail, some guidance around trail feasibility. This did take a look at a few specific trails that were earlier identified by kind of a bond project, but also more importantly, I think that it really does outline the methodology for conducting that trail feasibility so that there's some consistency moving forward with what are you looking at, how are we kind of refining those kind of alternatives, and then deciding on what is appropriate for really the next steps of design and construction. And then just big picture, generally, we made some updates on kind of mapping and graphic legibility. As I said before, the city of Raleigh is a really hard city to see all of the detail on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. But I think that there's a lot of good work that's being done to move this information digitally. So it will be easy to kind of zoom in and out and see things that are a lot more specific on the city's website, and the city staff have already been thinking about how to do that effectively once this plan moves to adoption. Wanted to end with some next steps. We'll take some questions before, if there are any questions before the endorsement vote. Next steps, we are here January 20th on our Parks Board final review and endorsement. On this coming Monday, we're going to be meeting with the BPAC. And then on the 15th, we'll be in the City Council work session with the anticipation of a plan adoption in spring of this year, which I'm very excited about. Since the 9th, when we kind of released a more recent update of the draft plan document, we have met with the steering committee on the 5th, as well as the Greenway committee, and received unanimous endorsement from both of those committees. So we're excited to be here with all of you tonight. And then the last things from me are just some efforts that are already underway. If you remember, the plan has a 100-day action plan. This was not intended for everything to be completed within 100 days of adoption, but really to get things started. And I won't read every single one of these, but the big thing, the big takeaway here is that the city staff are already moving forward, thinking about changes to the UDO, looking at operational needs, really thinking about access and connectivity, building upon the work that the Neighborhood and Community Connections Program has already done, and thinking about that for Trail Request Program, and thinking about prioritized funding. Additionally, there's obviously a lot of options for funding. And so this is going to be a huge part of thinking what's next for the Capital Area Greenway system and new trails and reinvestment. So thinking about Parks Bond and money for that, penny for Parks tax, and then really looking at the budget kind of in the future years. And I think it is really important to note that there is already been some dedicated funding around security and safety on the system that is just really valuable. And those are things that happen concurrently with this planning process, thinking about security along the system and getting a few more eyes on the trail network. Lastly, some ongoing efforts. A lot of this is kind of we've touched on, but thinking about etiquette campaigns to address that safety, some of the safety issues. I know that sometimes we think about, there's the kind of the security component, but also just how people are interacting on our system. Thinking about really active communication, not only through signage, but also thinking about online tools and social media. And then really big picture, being proactive in how we communicate what is going on our system. I will say, I thought it was that I've got information about closures, and I think that the city is always trying to improve on getting that communication out there early and often, and then really thinking about other options for folks that may be using the system when it comes to detours. So with that, I'm gonna take a drink here, and I'm happy to answer any questions before an endorsement vote. And I'm gonna stop sharing just so I can see folks' faces. But
Great, thanks, Jared. I'll start it out with a couple questions if I can. First of all, there you had a slide kind of toward the end that was about design. Was it called design criteria? Something to think about when they're building new Greenway portions? Was that, if I understood that?
let me get to the slide so that way we can make sure that
Yeah.
we're on the same page here.
Yeah.
Go back here.
Yeah. So it wasn't.
Was it this one?
Yes, that's it. Yep. And so the idea here is that this is in the appendix to help the city have a methodology for figuring out how to sort of build new Greenway sections. Is that
Right
the
now,
idea?
yeah, right now the city, when we've identified new trail components, the first step is usually to do some kind of feasibility study. And so as part of our work, there were some kind of initial projects that feasibility study was conducted. That information is also in this appendix. But more importantly, we kind of took a step back and said, well, what's important to be capturing in those feasibility studies? And so that consistency and having that methodology is what we really wanted to capture as well. It's not just about the specifics, it's about the process. And so we wanted to do both of those things in Appendix F.
I wonder if it's appropriate to have a section that would talk about determine the level of infrastructure required for this section of Greenway. And you probably know what I'm getting at here because we've had some discussions about it, which is largely about lighting and also, about sort of amenities. And, it's one thing to have benches and trash cans. It's another thing to have drinking fountains, restrooms, and lighting, because that involves utility infrastructure.
Right.
So, I would think at this point would be the time to sort of say, is this an appropriate place to have that level of infrastructure? And then that way, before it comes before the Parks Board for even a schematic plan or a master plan, it would already be determined so that there would be that ability to sort of weigh in on that.
Absolutely. I think that is like probably a very easy add when it comes to just kind of what could be identified. I would say that the places where that is either very cost prohibitive or maybe not feasible, those things are identified already as part of that study. So like really low-lying areas, flood areas, things where drinking fountains, restrooms, where running utilities would be potentially, huge impacts. Those are all identified. So really this is just about identifying if there is an opportunity for some of these other pieces, just calling that out more specifically. And I think that that's a really good comment and a simple add, honestly.
Okay, great, thank you. That's all I have for now. Anyone else have any comments or questions?
I'm so happy to see the updates that you made. I have a list of issues and you addressed every single one of them. I just want to mention that I believe this is going before the city council after our vote. It might be good if there was a correction on page 54. According to the browser, in the plan, it is page 45. The top left line, it says at the intersection of Crabtree Boulevard and Blue Ridge Road. Beverly knows where I'm going. Do you want to complete it, Beverly?
Well, I assume
there is
do
no
not intersect.
intersection with those two streets.
Right.
It's Crabtree Valley Avenue, because I got all twisted up thinking, he's got to be right. I must be wrong. So I spent a little bit of time figuring it out.
We can absolutely make that correction.
Yeah, and also you can do, word search for this, but Smoky Mountains is spelled without an E. It's not Smoky with an E. The other stuff is just, you addressed everything. Those are the only two things I have. And now I can vote for it.
Thank
with
you.
Got it.
confidence.
Thank you. Dave, I see your hand up. Would you like to go next?
Or a couple things. One is on transportation and the goal that this is a transportation network. Why do we need on the neighborhood trails to close those during daylight hours or outside daylight hours? It seems to be a conflicting goal. Like today, I'd have to leave at 4 o'clock to get home before dark.
Yeah, I think that, so you're thinking about you're saying for the local trail?
Yeah, the neighborhood trail classification says open during daylight hours. And if we're trying to facilitate use as a transportation network, then legally being allowed on the trails after dark is a key thing.
Yeah.
And the neighborhood trails themselves are part of that last mile connection. And if that's where we're cutting it off, I'm concerned about folks pointing to the Greenway plan saying we need to police this more. Police do a better job controlling access to this Greenway and removing opportunities to transport yourself.
Yeah, it's a great comment, Dave. I think that, so two things. First, obviously we want to think about the capital area Greenway system as, a big system that serves a lot of purposes, right? Recreational, environmental, active transportation, active uses. One of the things I mentioned was refining the recommendation language. So that's probably in the version that you're looking at right now, hasn't been refined. It is in the document that we're updating, is to really take a deeper dive into how context and location and all of that really plays into the hours of operation. And so I think that what we want to do is leave there a lot of flexibility when it comes to how hours of operation is determined, and obviously how investment is really done, because there could be neighborhood trails that have lighting. And if
Right.
that's the case, then that's a different kind of operation program decision. And so we're making that refinement already. And I think that would hopefully help with the situation that we're talking about.
So is the refinement removing the blanket language that it's open only during daylight hours?
Yeah, it's really focusing on evaluation of hours of operation for trails of different contexts and different places.
Okay.
And I just want to step in and say that all of the recommendations for the functional classifications are intended to be flexible, and they're intended to be guidance, not prescriptive. It absolutely has to be this way in every situation, in every location, because obviously we know there might be some neighborhood trails that are more important connections for commuters. And in those situations, you might need to have lighting there. That might need to be open after daylight hours. So that would be something that would be determined at a future point in time. The subject of lighting is extremely sensitive. So we're really going to have to look at that carefully, and specifically, we'll probably have to do a lighting study on specific segments to see how or if it's possible to put in these locations, and if we do, how we can minimize the impacts.
Okay. Well, because that last stretch of Greenway connecting into your neighborhoods is so key to using it as transportation, I would recommend the question be not when do we open these after dark, but when should we not allow them to be open after dark? And the objective should be to have them, the first goal would be to have them open all the time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, why does it need to be closed? If you're riding at night, you have a headlamp on your bicycle, right? Just like a car has lights on its and doesn't rely just on street lights.
Right. So
Beverly, I got you
hoping that
next
makes
and then
sense.
Marcia.
Yeah,
Sorry.
second comment was on the spacing of amenities. Totally understand there's a lot of feasibility issues around running utilities and getting access, but the goals of water access every 2 to 3 miles and seating access at half-mile intervals still seems too big as a goal. I know reality will force you into situations where you have gaps like that, but particularly from mobility challenge people that I see on the Greenway all the time, a half mile is a long way. So I would like to see even just a bench worked in on a much smaller interval.
And David, have you thought about what that interval may be?
Quarter mile max. Yeah, and maybe they concentrate and there's a gradient, so where you're close to trail accesses, that the spacing is tighter, but then when you're in the deeper runs further away, where it's more likely to be folks who are long running or cycling, the seating isn't as critical, but adjacent to the high access points.
So you think that, and I'm just maybe within the first mile, adjacent to trail access points, or specifically trailheads, or
that
that's
makes
where the
sense.
quarter mile.
Yeah, something along those lines makes sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I've just seen a lot of people struggling, healing, trying to get their injuries back in shape, getting out further than they want to be, holding on to somebody that they're walking with, and looking at how difficult their travel is and how far they have to go. They need more.
I think the point of clustering it at trailheads makes some sense, though, because with as large as our Greenway system is, we surely can't have a bench every quarter mile. I think even half a mile is lofty. So
yeah, noted. I understand the realities.
Yeah. Beverly, did you have anything else, Dave? Sorry.
I think everything else got hit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm
All
good.
right.
Thanks.
Beverly, if you want to go next.
Well, and I'll begin sort of at the back end, tying in onto what Dave just said. People sometimes get started on a Greenway and don't know, the kind of terrain they're going to run into, or other issues. Part of that is because the only signage that exists is a flag telling them what Greenway they're on, and no contextual signage. And I, again, will pitch that Cary has a whole lot better signage than Raleigh does. And instead of just adding more of Raleigh signs, I hope we can kind of relook at what is effective signage scale-wise and things like that. The other thing I wanted to piggyback on was what Chris said about flexibility. And I agree with Dave's comment that that keeping the greenways open, because what is a commuter trail is not really possible for us as a Greenway board to define. Somebody's neighborhood trail or somebody's scenic trail is going to be what gets them all the way home. And simply because it's designated as an Oak City trail, those are really the oldest trails. They're not necessarily the most direct to population centers. They follow primarily, as we know, Crabtree Creek and Walnut Creek. So tied to that, I am very troubled by page 67 of the plan, which when it shows a diagram of an Oak City trail adjacent, it shows, Jared showed two diagrams on his PowerPoint. One was an urban design and one was along a stream with houses there. And even with houses and a stream, lighting was indicated. And I think that the situations where along a stream we will be able to afford environmentally and financially to put lighting in is setting up the wrong expectation for the majority of our greenway. I mean, the two, I would say that Walnut Creek and Crabtree Creek are both about 85% stream side, and they make up about 75%. You all probably have the specific number, but it's somewhere between 65 and 70% of our greenway. So those are not logical places to put lights. That we've got to look at, we're talking about a biophilic city, and we talk about climate change, and we talk about protecting nature, and lighting is not compatible with those stream side parts. For urban side pieces, of course, and access with your headlamps, of course, but lighting, who knows where we're putting it the right places. And I understand a feasibility study, but why, until we have to make our greenways really effective, what we need is the connectivity of those high priority trails, and then more people can use it for transportation. I think that's the key link, is connectivity, connecting roadside pieces where people can bike protected. And so I've said my piece, but I'm really uncomfortable with page 67 showing lighting on along a stream side. And for that reason, even though I endorse the plan, but previously I won't be supporting it with that.
I do wonder if the default could be to not have lights on that, and then kind of the opposite of how you have shown it. You've shown it as lights with your caveat where lighting is appropriate, blah, blah, blah. But maybe it should not show a light and just say, if, where lighting is appropriate, do these things, just the opposite with the graphic. Lisa, did you have a response to Beverly before Jared?
Yeah, I think there's a way of tweaking the plan I think we're all on the same page when it comes to lighting. I think it's just maybe graphically or textually something that needs to be changed. But when it comes to lighting is really going to be challenging for us for many reasons, including working in lighting in floodplains, access, being able to get the utilities there, having light so close to neighborhoods where you have light, potential light pollution. Lighting is a very sensitive topic, not just here, but just internally talking about lighting with staff. So it is going to be a challenging endeavor for us. And that is why we really need to study it more. And this plan does not say, just because it's in a graphic or in the plan, it's some guidance. It's, again, providing some flexibility for that, but it's not that we're going to go out and install these lights. I mean, it is going to be so site specific, just like when you design a trail. The trails end up where they are exactly because that is the only location for them.
But graphics set expectations.
I'm sorry?
Graphics set expectations.
Well, we can take a look at that, Jared and Chris, and see what maybe we can change there to make it, to provide that clarification. But I think we could, as far as Jared, Chris, and I, be in agreement that the intent is not to light, all Oak City trails. That I don't think that will happen in 100 years. So that's something we can look at and see how we can make that a little bit clearer. Is that fair, Jared, Chris?
Yeah.
Jared, I see your hand up. You want to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond. I think that, changing a graphic is super easy. If that's what it, I guess more importantly is making sure that we're okay with the language of kind of like where it may be appropriate, as long as it's not represented kind of to your point of like the default being that stream side not showing the in the graphic that lighting, but still having that language where it's appropriate. I guess the one thing I just want to make sure that we are aware of is that like we're living in 2022 and things are evolving really quickly. And I think that I don't want to sell us short in opportunities that may arise in the future, and giving you the flexibility to kind of capitalize on those in a variety of ways. So we work with communities everywhere that are installing solar lighting that is a lot less intensive for trails, that, passive detection, that all of those kinds of things that I can only imagine what could happen in the future with this. And so I'm happy to take off the lighting off of the graphic if that's what we all decide, and make it kind of the default so that it doesn't set that expectation, as Beverly mentioned.
I think the three of us, probably are okay with taking that off the graphic, if Beverly, if that's really important to you. So would that make you comfortable endorsing the plan if we can tell you tonight that we will take that off of the graphic? We'll leave the text, but just take it off of that one graphic.
Yeah, I think other people have other comments, and then I'll weigh in on that too. But but I will say one thing, and that is I've been on this board for 3 years, and we've been talking about tunnel lighting, and there are only a half a dozen tunnels, and they're not all lit yet. And they get knocked out, they get graffitied. And so lighting has a lot of other problems with it beside it, but primarily my concern is nature. But anyway, I'll let other people speak.
One more note on the lighting of the tunnels. We are in the process of lighting every single tunnel. From a safety perspective, those lights will be on 24/7. And it has nothing to do with commuting hours. It's not, it's not our intent that that's the first step towards making this a transportation system. It's really to provide lighting in tunnels. Some of those tunnels are dark during the day. So I just wanted to add that the tunnels are in the process of all being lit, which I think is a good thing.
Yep, absolutely. Marcia, your hand's been up for a while. Would you like to comment?
Yes, I would. And I'm tagging on what Beverly said. I just want to say a little more about it. I think we humans have an obligation to care for the neighbors that have fur and feathers, and the lighting along the greenways will have an impact on them. So if there is some solar light that balances the needs of the woods dwellers, I think that that should be taken into account. And as somebody said, we're growing so fast. If we're not thinking carefully about what kind of city we want this to be, do we want it to be a green city? Do we want it to be a biophilic city that truly is nature rich? Well, then let's talk about that. Let's not ignore it. So there's my 2 cents.
Was somebody else raising their hand? I was just going to.
Yeah, Malay is next, and then Van, I can have you right next.
Yeah, just tell me when.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks very much. All right, and I think my only point that I wanted to kind of talk about was, similar to the line of thought that we were suggesting that at the entrances or the access points to the trailway systems, we have, benches and access to water, and we take into consideration, some of the disabled people, or, being more accommodating. What are our thoughts around, children, like especially, if there are parents with children of younger ages that want to have access to the trails, they have a different set of needs than, let's say, teens or adults. And I didn't see a lot of information kind of speaking to that point. And maybe it's not justified based on the survey that we collected, but have you considered that?
Can you elaborate on what type of needs you're referring to?
Yeah, like family bathrooms as opposed to standard male and female bathrooms for little children. It was one of the thoughts that I had, areas where there are smaller playgrounds for the kids of younger ages or access to things that are easier. Those were the kind of line of thoughts that I had.
So I think I can probably address that a little bit. So all those amenities that you just mentioned are primarily located in parks themselves that happen to be adjacent to the capital area Greenway system. They aren't on the Greenway system themselves. So they aren't necessarily something that we would get so specific into with this planning effort. We do want to be moving towards looking at providing comfort stations, which are bathrooms along the Greenway, not just in a park that's nearby, where we can do that. And that is definitely something that we'll be looking at that time when we are analyzing where we can do that, is putting into consideration restroom facilities that'll be approachable and usable by all users, families, individuals, and otherwise.
I would say the etiquette plan that Jared mentioned also touches on that, because in my opinion, that's a lot of the issue is when you're on the Greenway with small children that are learning how to bicycle and are weaving, and then, you know, folks come in going quite fast. That can be a scary situation. So, you know, addressing that issue is helpful.
And new cross sections have wider trail widths too, which is obviously a huge help for kids. I know as teaching my daughter how to ride a bike, that's always extremely valuable.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Stephen, did you want to comment on something before Van speaks? Oh, you're still muted. Yep, there you go.
Only that our default position is going to be no lighting, right? So I think we'll, for this board, we'll be super thoughtful. Some of the really big details, we have thousands of parcels that we cross. Some of them have very unique agreements. So lighting might be like absolutely not. And just hearing earlier about the environmental aspect, that's like the core of the Greenway system. Linear wildlife and stormwater corridors and recreation day use. So, and then the third would be it will be a public process. Oop, I'm echoing, sorry. So we do public processes for everything. So just understand, I would say is our default position will be is highly unlikely. We'll be very technical, and where we do it, we'll talk about those individuals that live nearby because they'll be the most impacted.
Yeah, and it will come before this board for review and approval, typically, right? Thanks, Stephen. Van, do you have some comments?
I'm not muted, am I? Okay. Stephen, you actually just, I think you said something that was the nature of my question, which is being new to the board here, you guys can educate me. Is the Greenway, is it meant to be, or is sort of the intention of it to be enjoyed just during the daytime? And because I was thinking about the lighting question, and as somebody who uses it at night, that if you do use it at night, I always wear a headlamp, right? Because I want people to see me, and I also want to see where I'm running. But there are also times when I'll run, because I live right behind the YMCA downtown, and so I'll hook down and I'll run the Greenway along Western. And there are times when I see, for example, NC State girls running together, and it's dark and they're not wearing lights, and I'm thinking, man, that is just, it feels a little unsettled and unsafe. But I also understand the arguments of some of you, which is you put up lighting, and granted, I think everybody agrees we're not talking about big, huge light, that creates light pollution. I'm thinking kind of the, that has a cover on it, and it's subdued and it's kind of soft and warm and cozy. But I thought if the greenways, if the greenways just gets used at night by whoever wants it, but we're not thinking about that as an amenity that we want to create, which is 24/7 use. You guys help me understand. Is that written in? Is it implicit? Is it? Because I'm always torn. I'm running and I'm going, man, that is a dark corridor right there. I would love to have some light right there. On the other hand, I think, okay, that's in somebody's backyard, or there's some deer out there. And
yeah, it's excellent. And I appreciate your candor. One, our greenways are closed at night, to be honest with you.
So am I?
I'm gonna send the police after you.
Okay.
So I will say the default of our outdoor spaces, and I'll invite Scott and Ken and Oscar. If it's an outdoor space and it's at night, it is closed unless we have deemed it allowed to be open. And sometimes that is council approval. So, if I think about the greenways, it'll be as where are we tactically for safety, right?
Yeah.
And maybe urban areas. And those will have public processes. Once we venture out of those ones, it'll get really challenging for us to justify the worthiness of the ability and the worthiness of lighting those spaces for environmental purposes and then other public safety. Because then it puts the police in a different position to have to monitor those. And so
I see. That makes
sense. We figured light was going to be the topic of the conversation, honestly. So, and this board will be intricately involved in those policy discussions. But, like I'll say again, from a default position, it is outdoor spaces outside or outdoor spaces at night are closed for the park system generally, unless we deem them and then we light the heck out of it. And we now are moving to cameras. So it just has all this ripple effect from maintenance and safety and operations. And then the question, of the more we light, how are we doing with our furry friends and our neighbors? So, and this is, I think, that position of we're urbanizing, but rest assured, I would say our tradition is if it's dark, it's closed. So.
Now, when you say closed, just as a point of clarification, and some of this is so that I feel like my conscience can be clear. If it's closed, does that mean I shouldn't be running on it? Nobody should be using it? Or is it closed just meaning it's no longer in our jurisdiction because kind of like if you want to go out and play in Dick's Park right now at night with flashlights but we're not there. It's not really open. So
right. It's dusk till dawn, which means we are not physically present.
Okay.
We have the limited ability. It is probably put on you to call if you see something. So
sure. Yeah.
It basically is posted to say we have dawn till dusk. Sorry, dusk till dawn. Well, it's easier to say one or the other. And that has been our ability, and that's a resource issue, right? And
of course,
acknowledging neighbors and acknowledging undesirable activities. Of course, we have lit tennis courts and lit ball fields, but even those go dark after leagues and so. So
thank you, and thank you guys for letting me gain some clarity on that.
Great questions. Yep. I mean, it all goes back to, again, the earlier question by Dave of if we want these to be transportation corridors, but then we're saying they close at dusk. And like you said, in the wintertime, dusk is at whatever, 5:30. How does that work? Great question.
All right. So is the answer I'm hearing right now, we're not changing that's a closed subject. We're not changing the position that all facilities are closed at night?
I think that's true because that's a larger Parks Department.
Right. So does that mean we cannot change the language in the Greenway plan to note that to have a transportation facility, it needs to be open beyond daylight hours?
The Greenway plan does make that recommendation to evaluate locations where we would need lighting and also expanded hours to address commuter needs.
Right. Chris, I feel like we're missing it. if we're trying to designate individual corridors as transportation corridors, we failed on the last mile connection to the neighborhoods. So we've got basic conflicts in our interest. Lighting, I'm a opponent of lighting. I don't really want to see lighting anywhere, but the facility as transportation needs to be open to function as transportation.
Right. So Chris, are you saying that if it is a functional transportation corridor on the Greenway system, then it has to be lit? Is that sort of what the Greenway master plan would recommend?
I wish everyone would stop focusing so much on like, this is what it says and this is what it has to be in every location.
Yeah.
The recommendations are intended to be flexible. When we decide which corridor is going to have lighting, which one won't, that will be a detailed study. And you all will be involved in that. And you'll have input on where lighting goes, what kind of lighting it is. Just because the plan gives guidance on a neighborhood trail not having lighting or being open during daytime hours doesn't mean that all of them are going to be that way. And we need to give some type of guidance because we have to balance the needs of people that need to use these trails after dark and the people that don't want them open after dark. You know, and like a neighborhood trail, those are typically pretty short sections. They might go through a residential neighborhood. They're not typically trails that connect like an activity center to another activity center. They might be running really close to homes where people may not want lighting coming into their windows. You know, those are all things that are going to have to be figured out when we do that next level of analysis. This plan is supposed to give us general guidance system-wide.
Right, Chris, but if your neighborhood trail description says those trails are to connect to Oak City trails, then those are going to become your transportation network. And my main concern is that a neighbor who doesn't want anybody there will then point to this guidance and say, close this Greenway, police it, and keep people off it, which then collapses it as a transportation connection.
Jared, did you have a response to this? Or Beverly, did you want to say something first? I just thought Jarrett might have some insight.
Well, yeah, I mean, I want to agree with Chris, but when I go to page 68 and I printed, I mean, of this whole thing, there are only like 4 pages that I disagree with. There are a lot of really strong recommendations in this thing. But when you go to the definition on page 68 of the plan, Oak City Trails, first bold letters, Oak City Trail expectations. First thing, lighting along trails. So it's not just a flexibility issue, it's an expectation issue. And that's, I think, what pretty across the board, access, like Van said, if I'm out even walking my dog at night, I'm wearing a headlight on the street. If I'm going to ride a bike on a trail at night, I'm not going to just have a little visibility light. I'm going to have the right kind of lighting to be on the trail. And the city doesn't know where I'm going. They can't light every place I'm going to be. And so it's too many people and too few people. We need to make the roads safer too for cyclists, for good transportation. And we need to protect our greenways as environmental areas.
I'm sorry, I think it says lighting along trails with an asterisk that says provision and placement of lighting will be determined during trail design construction will be dependent upon the context of the environment.
It does, but it still is the first bullet.
So is it the placement of it? I mean, is it graphically? I mean, it sounds like we don't like lights, but we can change, but.
But it doesn't need to be on there to be an expectation.
Right, I just want to make sure the narrative is explained to the full board. You left off a very important piece that it says it will be determined amongst the design and the context of the areas. And that wasn't shared.
Yeah.
Well, I gave them the page.
That's
I mean, I don't mind the nuance because I don't think it's as black. It's not black and white. There's a nuance to it. So I don't mind the language, especially since it'll be running through this board and on your recommendations. So
Jared, would you like to say something?
I just wanted to add, I think that the hard thing that we, and this it really obviously focuses on when our mind is very entrenched in the existing trails that are there today. And I think I hear the idea around adding new lights to along our floodway kind of corridors. I definitely hear that's a hard pill to swallow. And I agree with Beverly. If I'm going to use that trail at night, I'm going to have the appropriate lighting. But the future trails, new trails that we add that will be Oak City, part of that expectation is because a lot of them are street side. And we do think that those are the types. I hear Van talk about running along Western, right? There's a street side component to that I also spend a lot of time on in the evening, right? And I think that there is an expectation that when you're along those trails that start to connect you to destinations, that if you're going to leave work at 4:30 in the winter, that you have not only the connection to destination, but some of that kind of amenity of lighting. And I think that the reason I brought that up is because I want there to be the flexibility as you move forward to be thinking about both. That to be like this corridor, absolutely no lighting, it's appropriate, it's context appropriate for it. And then others to be like, we can't imagine this corridor without lighting. And that this system becomes some part of the bigger way that people move. And so I definitely want to hear what Dave is saying about that first and last mile connection. It becomes extremely important. And closure and how the hours of operation all plays into that. This document is supposed to point to discussion and guide the next steps of study and evaluation and assessment by city staff and moving in a direction. It's not supposed to be the step-by-step like instruction manual for them to just check things off, right? They're smart, critical thinkers. And they have their own kind of work plans and other goals that have to tie in with the larger park system, et cetera. And so, any of the changes that we've talked about, we want to move a bullet to the last one. We want to remove something from graphic. Those don't bother me at all. I think the thing that I want to just make sure that we keep in, and Beverly, thank you for saying that's 4 pages and there's a lot of other good things in it, because there's a lot of valuable direction and opportunity to build on in the future for the staff. And that's the things I don't want to take away from this document. If we want to move it and modify some of that, that is completely fine and very easy on our end, if that's something that this board would like us to do.
Thanks, Jared. Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, hi guys. Just a couple small things. I think there's a couple pieces here, I think, that reflect sort of an ongoing tension that we've sort of been trying to navigate for probably, well, the entire time I've been on the board. In that there's a real like weird fuzzy line between greenways, greenway trails, multi-use paths, and those type of things. And I don't know that this plan entirely resolves it because it's sort of lived entirely within the Parks Department. But I think that those tensions continue to exist in this process. And I don't know how we ever resolve that. I think it's going to be an ongoing challenge, because I think there are folks who think of the trails as trails and transportation, and those who aren't. I think that the step forward here is that we actually start having some categorization and can talk about what that looks like, and actually have some, that is a step. I would like eventually to see some sort of intermeshing, but that wasn't going to be possible with this project. And I haven't been as well, I can't complain too much because I haven't been as involved as I would have wanted to be otherwise. But I think that this is just that there's a challenge here, that this is more of like a statement going forward, that there's a real weird fuzzy zone between multi-use paths, trails, and what we want greenway corridors to be in terms of nature. And I don't know that we've entirely resolved that, or this plan entirely resolves that, because this plan just sort of updates our corridors plus our greenway trails in greenways and then connecting them to each other, which is great, and then classifies some as potentially being more intensive, which is a great step forward and a good piece. The second piece of that is that Chris said that of course this would come back to us in terms of lighting and in terms of other things like that. And I'm struggling to, in the document, see how that procedure would be implemented. And if the document should hold some sort of procedural recommendation for what that means. Now we have classifications, now that there are elements of those classifications, now that there are expectations, and then potentially this one makes sense for lighting or to be intensified because of the traffic needs or de-intensified because of, you know, whatever else. I'm struggling, maybe I'm just missing it in the document, and forgive me for that. But to understand where there's a process in here for how these things evolve. And when it comes to us, when we get triggered, when we get asked, when it just goes to the Greenway committee, just asked for updates, you know, those type of triggers that where we come back and essentially get a vetting element to it.
That's a fair question, and I think that's a worthwhile thing to maybe add in there, is sort of what is the process for getting this approved if it's not already. Jared, go ahead.
There we go. All great points, Brad. The trail investment framework actually does talk through kind of step by step how this process would go. It doesn't specifically name the Parks Board because I think that there's a variety of places that you may come in. It kind of lists 4 steps: identify a classification for a new trail, think about the cross section that's appropriate, determine the design elements that may be important for you, and then contextualize the details, because there's obviously things that could be very different depending on what's going on in each part of the trail or a different location in the community. So that's kind of where we had placed that.
Yeah.
If there's more detail, we can do that.
I just, in an ongoing way, it sounds like there's going to be evolving things happening. It sounds like that's a process for a new trail. I just think there's an evolving question. I mean, like, is there a work plan that gets submitted to the Parks Board every year? Like, we think this year we're going to have $5 million for maintenance, and here's where we plan to do that based on the plan. Like, what's the reporting structure for those type of things happening so that we can sort of have feedback on that? I know that in an ad hoc way, we've done that historically, where like we've fixed Greenway. We've said, go out and try these things because of whatever, but because we like anti-stick stuff or whatever. But there isn't, like, at the beginning of the year, like, here's our 5 capital projects we're working on this year. And I don't know if that's in the plan or whatever else it is, but some sort of more cadence of making sure we're coming back to verify that, like, our expectations.
But I'll say, Brad, I feel like in my memory, you know, Lisa, you typically come to us with any major projects and give us an update on what's going on. And that would be, sorry, there's a siren going by my window. Okay. And that would be our opportunity to say, wait a second, why are you putting lights in here, Lisa? This isn't a good spot to do that. I mean, I guess the question is just, is it too far along by the time it comes to us? Because that does happen occasionally, where by the time we're really reviewing it, it's already, you know, pretty deep into design or about to go to construction.
Well,
so
any significant project that we've had, like the Crabtree West or the Trenton Road, Lassiter Mill, like those projects come to this board, and they come at typically Crabtree West, I believe that was, and Trenton Road, those came fairly early. They wouldn't wait till like a 65%. It came to like a 30% because that was after we had engaged, you know, with the communities and with the public, and those go all the way to city council. You know, and sometimes those projects have come at 65% where you've got a little bit more of that detail. I think, you know, when we go into a project design, we have sort of, based on public input, based internally of what staff knows are issues or concerns or needs, you know, we try to incorporate that into the design. And I think those things are not like secrets. It's not like the lighting, it's not like as if a plan would come at 30% And then we would not state that up front. You know, if that was our intent, that's something that we would do up front. So there are those opportunities for this board to provide that feedback. Now, smaller projects where realignment of Mine Creek that would eliminate those two structures 32 and 33, just south of Shelley Lake. We felt that because of the sensitivity of that type of project, that it was necessary that we come to get input and support from the board. So I think a lot of the projects, it just depends on the nature of the project. One thing I did want to just comment on, when we start a process for design for a project, there's so many factors, and kind of alluded to this earlier, is that trail goes exactly where the environment's going to allow it based on topography, where the soils are wet. And so where you see that trail is really the only place it could go. And so there's so many factors, like the guide, the master plan gives guidance on what the wish should be, if there should be lighting, but there's so many things that would dictate that. So we may not have the space to build a 14-foot trail in a section where guidance says you can build up to a 14-foot trail. Might can only be 10. Lighting, for example, the plan could suggest that lighting go along this section of trail, but we might not be able to get utilities to that area to light it. So from a design perspective, and somebody that goes through these processes, that sees all the intricate things that you could come across in a design process, going to this plan and being able to say, okay, this is what I should strive for, but we're not going to be able to get there because of whatever the circumstance might be. You know, you might have the trail right next to a community where the distance between a community and the trail, you know, isn't very deep. So there's so many considerations of elements of a design that need to be considered, and single situation is unique. Personally, in my review of the plan, I wanted that flexibility. I wanted to be able to go and not get myself in a situation where it says the plan says you absolutely have to do this here. Lisa, why didn't you provide it? So I feel that the plan does that. It provides that flexibility to allow for all those nuances that you have in a design process.
I think we get that. Yeah, that's great, Lisa. I think one of the things that I'm hearing concern about from some is this becomes a document that lives for a long time and is referred to. And even though we all know in a lot of ways it will just be used for guidance and it'll be used for getting grants. That's a big part of why you have documents like this. It is there. And if you retire or you leave, we just want to be sure that folks who are there in the future still approach it in the same way. And so making sure there's language in there that when someone refers to it in 20 years, 15 years, you know, it may live a long time. The last one was around a long time. Then we want to be sure that it's clear, and that it, you know, even if it's just something as simple as saying any of these things have to come before the board and be reviewed for whether or not they have, you know, some of this infrastructure, like some of that language, I think would just give a little bit of help people feel a little better.
I have a question for Stephen and or Oscar. Does it live anywhere in the system plan on the process for how park planning gets approved and adopted and that kind of thing? Or is that, I'm thinking that's more of like an internal process, and can something like that live somewhere else? I don't know if necessarily the plan is the place for an operating.
Well, it's in the public participation policy that was just recently updated. So,
Yeah, I was going to
yeah.
say, that's what I was going to
Yep.
share. Jen, thank you. You know, our approach is that when we're at the concept level, we approach the board. Even prior to that, at the concept level, we try to work out anything that might be sticky for you all. And then again, usually at 30 to 40%. And there's times where we have not reconciled things and we bring it to the board. It's like a no. Do you go to the board? Do you don't? But for the most part, we meet individually with people or with groups to try to make sure we can close in the gaps as much as possible. But Jen's right, there is not a prescriptive, you have to go at this point in time, because every one of these projects are on an individual neighborhood basis with different features, different resolutions, and different sticking points. So allowing us the most flexibility to reconcile and build consensus before we come to you is the approach that has been decided by the council and the city. So.
Beverly, go ahead.
I've shared this with a couple of you in conversation, and I have seen, having been an elected official for 10 years and seen lots of plans come along, that sometimes because something's in a plan, it gets put in at the next available option and not always gets that. It becomes a default, and I've got examples from the Board of Education, and I won't bore you with them now, but it happens. And so that's, I guess, where my flag goes way up on seeing pictures, which people, we know, whether we're adults or children, we read the pictures first. And so that's why my mind and eyes went to the graphics. And when I see graphics that have highlights that show something that is less than what we've discussed in the fine details tonight, that's where I'm reacting to. The other point is lighting is costly. And for this Greenway to be the best it can be, obviously we all know it needs more funds, but it also, we need to prioritize the linkage, the connectivity, and that's hit on in this plan, but I didn't feel like it was hit on enough in the presentation. And I think it's a really, really critical piece that we have to have. And as Brad identified a minute ago, we have this sort of mishmash where we have partly that's on road, part that's on Greenway, and people don't know what to call some of these pieces, and I don't know what to call them. Our maps don't show us what to call them, and it gets us confused. But it's that linkage and connectivity that is the most important thing. And if lighting takes away or anything takes away from connectivity and maintenance, then we have less of a Greenway. And so that's my final thing.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for the consultant team or staff? Brad, yep.
This is just a procedural point that I'll make, since it's either my last or second to last meeting. I really do not appreciate being told that council wants you all to come to some sort of consensus before coming to us. This council has repeatedly said that they value our input and they value our advice. Not only this council, but the previous council. I don't like being told that in order to come to us, you have to put it in a box. And I encourage this board to continue to push this department to be more transparent and to bring things to us sooner, earlier. You know, closing a bridge, we're not going to bring that to you, no big deal. We're, in theory, the folks who are representatives of this board out in the larger, representatives of the department out in the larger community. And it is absolutely infuriating that you wouldn't bring something that might close a Greenway for a few weeks to us just to say, hey, this is going to be closed. You know, you all should know about it, because a lot of times these things get delayed and then it's months, not weeks. but just this attitude that like you have to bring things to us in a pretty little box. We have to break that down. We have to figure out a way to get around that. And I just do not appreciate the defensiveness about these procedures. I do not appreciate that, oh yeah, it's fine, we'll bring it to you. That's not the way it's worked. So this stuff needs to be codified. It needs to be linked to the participation plan. It needs to be something that this board continues to push on. You know, whether I'm here, I'm not going to be here anymore. But I think you have to hold these guys accountable, because I don't like this council and previous councils, all the time I've been on this board, have repeatedly said, we trust the Parks Board to give us feedback and advice about what's going on in the park system, and to give feedback and responsiveness to what's going on. And the idea that council instead wants staff to wrap it up in a bow before they bring it to us, that's very frustrating to hear. And so please, we're going to be looking, what are we looking at next? Devereaux Meadows, which almost completely went below our radar. And almost completely didn't get touched or looked at by us at all if it hadn't been for some rabble rousing. So push back.
Right. Thanks, Brad. Okay. I guess I'll just make a couple comments. I feel like overall, you know, I've been pretty pleased with this plan, and, you know, the steering committee has had a fair amount of involvement and the ability to review it as we've been going along. I think a lot of the comments that we're hearing right now and are things that have been kind of coming up. And to be honest, I think they would have come up more clearly if we were meeting in person. I think, you know, all the virtual meetings have been really hard. And it's just really hard to really dig into a report when you're just sort of looking at things on a screen from a distance, and, you know, there's a lot of brevity involved. So, but, you know, I think overall, what I feel like I'm hearing is that we want to be sure the emphasis is on open space, recreation. We want to make sure that lighting is not a requirement, because in a lot of cases it doesn't seem appropriate. And, you know, I'm hearing from staff a lot of agreement to that. So it's just making sure that it's in there so that we can feel good about it, that, you know, it's not something that in 20 years will be misinterpreted. So those are just sort of my thoughts on a lot of that. I'm going to hand it back over to Jared unless anyone else has any comments. Okay.
All right. I just wanted to do a little bit of a recap, if that's good, on what I think we've heard as modifications that need to be made. And so I'm gonna try to read my notes here. Modify the lighting graphic as part of the Oak City Trail that's along the stream corridor. Along with that, to make sure that the bullet point is moved, that it really is clear that no lighting is the default along specifically those floodplain stream corridors, but really that's kind of evaluation and study is needed if ever lighting is going to be added. Updating the language in the feasibility appendix around like the key infrastructure that may be considered. Making sure that the trail reinvestment framework really does kind of point to flexibility, but also the process to make some of these decisions, not only for new trails, but also for trail reinvestment. And then just really make sure that we're refining language around kind of assessing hours of operation and refining that so that it's clear throughout and adjacent to every one of the graphics. I know we talked about a lot, but I'm hoping that those are some of the big ones. Yes, Beverly?
I just wanted to add, I think an important linkage, and I think Dave made this point, of the disconnect between lighting and usage. And I think that, you know, some people have in their mind, oh, well, I can only use, and right now, as Stephen said, it's not technically open, but I think that we don't have to have lighting to expand usage is an important concept that's not really articulated any place.
That's a good point to, I guess, and with that, the idea around accessibility for some of that, specifically seating near trailheads and how that may be a gradient. And then Carol, I didn't miss some of the minor comments that you made as well. So I really appreciate all of those. I'm hoping I got almost all of them.
That sounds right. And I'm sure Carol can send you any of her edits, right, Carol?
Appreciate that.
So a process question, and there's revisions in process. What we've looked at, I know you're already making more tweaks. So what exactly are we endorsing? And then I've also got the transportation conflicts with how the opening hours and the conflicts with transportation, and recognizing that this is a council problem. How do we communicate that they have an issue that they need to take a position on, but not hold up the approval process? Going back and forth, looking for some language that we may not ever be able to get to because it is outside the Greenway plan.
Lisa, go ahead.
So one thing, the city council in February is just a work session. They're not approving anything. And what we plan to do is take comments that we've heard from Greenway Committee, comments that we'll hear from BPAC and this board, and we're going to be summarizing what those changes are. Right now we're summarizing it in a memo that will go to Oscar and potentially be back up to the city council agenda item. So we will be making those changes in the plan prior to the city council work session in February 15th. And then there won't be an approval or guidance on what city council wants to do until, I'm thinking, March, April. And so I'm wondering if Stephen has a suggestion there.
No, I think, Lisa, you were going in the direction. So we're going to summarize what we heard today. The council has a work session. They make no decision in a work session. So we would invite Jen and anybody else, Jennifer, sorry, anybody else who wants to attend to share, here are some of the things the board has some pause with, and we want you to be aware. Hopefully we've captured that, and we can work with Jennifer and Beverly, whoever, through Lisa, Jared, and Chris. Are we capturing the essence of the concerns that Dave has just shared? So when the council hears it, to say, yeah, the board likes where we're going, but here's some things we want you to reflect upon, because the work session is going to be a discussion, and then might go to a subcommittee for further discussion, and then come back to the council. So I guess we're, just to summarize, we'll capture what we believe, what we've heard, share it with the board. And when we give it to the council, we'll invite whichever board members want to attend to say, here's the board members that want to discuss this with you. So that's my proposition.
So that would be our opportunity, Dave, to say, these are some kind of bigger questions that need to be addressed at a larger level that, maybe don't get quite addressed at this point, but something that you guys need to be thinking about is, what are the hours of the Greenway system? How does this dovetail with potential transportation use? And how does this affect lighting on the Greenway? Those are sort of big topics. And
typically with larger plans like this, there are these follow-up studies. We talked about lighting as a perfect example one. And if that's the board's position to say, hey, these 2 or 3 things you really got to figure out when the plan's adopted, and fund them and direct them to be the first priorities upon the implementation plan.
Yeah, and just like the changes that we want to make to the UDO, that is a whole separate process as well. So really what we're asking council is, hey, give us the okay to go ahead and start working on these things. And so all of those changes that we're looking to make as part of the UDO, you will see those as well. And remember that one of the recommendations in this plan is to update this plan every 5 years. Now, it won't be an entire rewrite like we've done this time, but we will revisit this plan every 5 years and make those tweaks to make improvements, after we put it into play for a little bit to see what's working, what's not working.
Okay, thanks, Lisa.
That to me sounds like a workable approach, because indeed overall I think Tool's done a killer job. It's an awesome document, but don't want to just give it a blanket endorsement without sending up some caveats for more consideration.
Great. Okay, Jared, are you going to lead our vote on the endorsement, or shall I?
I was going to say, I guess,
Okay.
yeah, if you would like to, the way I'd set it up was similar to with the Greenway committee, with using kind of an online interactive polling,
Sure.
if that works for everybody. I guess the big thing here would be that, we are hearing all of these comments with this memo. Our goal would be to make these revisions based on these comments, so that when we are presenting to City Council, that we not only can bring up what we heard from all of you, but talk through how those things have been addressed in the plan that they are seeing. And so that would obviously be part of any kind of packet that went out to them, or so ahead of time. So
what we would be endorsing right now is what you've shown us with these adjustments that we've talked about.
That's correct.
Yeah, Beverly. Yeah.
This is just a sort of a public meetings issue. Voting by Mentimeter is maybe not meeting our public
transparency
process requirements. We might just have to do a vote.
That can work as well, and we can record that information.
Well, do I hear a motion to approve with the amendments as discussed? I see Malay's hand up. Is there a second?
I will second.
All right, Beverly. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand so we can document it. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any against? All right, I see none. Seeing none, the motion to approve has passed. Thank you. Well, that was easy.
How?
Thanks to Jared, Chris, and the team. Solid work. All right. Well, moving on to the next item on the agenda, we have an update on Devereaux Meadow Park. Per Brad's comment earlier, this is something that we really push to be more involved in as a board. So I'm happy to be hearing an update tonight. So I'm going to hand it over to Gary Claiborne. Are you here?
Hey, good evening, you all. Can you see my screen and hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. First, I'm just going to introduce myself. It's been a while since I've been before you all, and I know there's some new members as well. My name is Gary Claiborne. I'm Capital Projects Manager with Parks and Rec, and I am the City Project Manager for the proposed Devereaux Meadow Park project. I am here with members of our design team, Emily McCoy of Design Workshop, and Jonathan Smith of Tetra Tech. Board members, you all should have received a memo and backup materials describing the current project scope over the past year. Tonight's presentation will be a progress update only with a focus on the draft concept plan. We plan on returning to you all in a few months with a recommended final concept plan following our next public engagement phase, which will take place next month. From the project start in 2017, Devereaux Meadow Park has been proposed to include site remediation, development of a natural and passive park, restoration of Pigeon House Branch, which is a stream that flows along the western edge of the site, and the first link of the future Pigeon House Branch Greenway Trail. Some schedule highlights. The project has been divided into 3 main stages. We are currently in stage 2, which is centered around the development of concept and schematic designs. 3 concept plan alternatives were developed in early 2021 and were vetted through our city staff design resource team, the project stakeholder committee, and a public engagement process. Additional remedial investigations were also performed last year. Based on public feedback and findings from the remedial investigations, the design team developed a draft concept plan a few months ago and presented it to the DRT and to our stakeholder committee this past December. The design team continues to refine the draft concept plan after we met with the Parks Board. After we meet with you all, we will start our second round of public engagement next month. Based on the feedback received, the draft concept plan will be refined to a final concept plan, and again, presented to you all this spring for endorsement. These are the 3 concept alternatives reviewed by stakeholders and the public last summer, each primarily defined by differing treatments of Pigeon House Branch. Our public outreach on the concept alternatives include a virtual open house in May and a recorded presentations that were placed on the project website, presentation to neighborhood groups, online and hard copy survey distribution. And to advertise, we use social media channels in hard copy and virtual flyer and survey distribution to local multifamily housing, churches, schools, and to some of the previous CAC groups. When the survey closed in August, there were over 800 survey participants in addition to the comments received during the open house and stakeholder committee meetings. Public survey results indicated a preference for concept number 3. Using the feedback received, design vision was shaped using a meandering Pigeon House Branch as the defining park feature. The concept design vision proposes an escape to nature within the city, a celebration of water and our native plant communities, a diversity of experiences from social gathering spaces to places for individual reflection and respite, interpretive elements that honor the site and the surrounding areas, rich past. And with that, I'm going to pass along the presentation to Emily McCoy, who will go over the transition of that vision into our draft concept plan.
Thanks, Gary. Good evening, everyone. My name is Emily McCoy. I'm a principal at Design Workshop located here in Raleigh. And as Gary noted, from the collected feedback, it was determined that concept 3, which was called Meander, was the preferred concept by all the groups. And that concept really did focus on highlighting the stream restoration as the organizing element for the design of the park and aimed to create a downtown oasis, which we heard a lot of comments related to creating nature in the city as an important vision for this project as a passive park, with some added elements of preferred elements from concepts 1 and 2, which include public art, but also interpretive elements that narrate the site's important history along with the neighborhood's history. Also, we've been working through over many months responding to the realities of the site contamination, the realities of stream and its floodplain, stormwater management, and all while trying to keep within a project budget. Next slide, please. This is the draft concept plan that, again, is sort of a hybridization between concept 3 with some elements from concept 1. And I'm just going to quickly walk you through some of the site elements from the south along P Street and then lead you up the site to the north. So we have 2 plazas located on the 13-acre site. One is along P Street that we're calling a Gateway Plaza that you'll see at the bottom of your screen. From this point, you can go either along the historic alley, what we're calling a history walk on the east side, the west side, the left side of your screen, up to another plaza that is adjacent to West Street. And then another decision point is on the east where the main circulation path, which will hopefully become a future Greenway path, leads you through the spine of the site through different trail alignments. We're keeping the stone aqueduct that exists there as a remnant of the stadium intact to reuse it as a retrofit for managing stormwater, protecting and keeping the oak alley. And again, this would be the history walk with that gathering plaza that would be on grade with West Street and could be accessed from West Street. On the east side of the park, I'll direct your attention to the berms that line Capitol Boulevard. We felt that traveling, particularly in the southbound direction on Capitol Boulevard, this will be an iconic new gateway that leads you to downtown from the north. So we want to celebrate that with art, but also balance protecting the soundscape and the visual sort of look into Capitol Boulevard from the park to help you feel like you're immersed in nature to the greatest extent possible. So we're imagining that berm is insinuated with public art to pronounce sort of that gateway from the north. In the middle of the site, you'll see the ability for us to have a constructed wetland system, which can have the capacity to take on a stormwater pipe that comes from Seaboard Station to the east. So we could daylight that pipe before that water makes itself into the stream. That constructed wetland system also has an overlook, and then you can see the trail systems are a series of loops where you could do a quick walk with your dog to a more meandering walk for lunch, or even longer time for half a day to really explore the site. And then to the north, you'll see less elements situated there because there is the high-speed rail will be going through the north end of our site overhead in the future if the transportation bill makes itself forward. Next slide, please. One important thing to note about this project is that it has several constraints. One being the contaminated soil. So this hot spot of orange that you see in the middle, after many months of testing, we were able to sort of indicate where that hot spot of contaminated soil is to work around that. We also have a sewer that needs to maintain a 15-foot buffer. We have overhead utility lines. We have the floodplain of Pigeon House. We have the historic aqueduct and alley of trees on the west side. We also have an elevated sewer line on the north end of the site. And you'll see here in the middle of where there's a little blue arrow on the right-hand side of your screen where that stormwater pipe comes into the site from Seaboard Station. And then we're also anticipating that elevated high-speed rail system. We don't know the exact elevation of that, but we can guess based on the surrounding rail where that will be and how tall that will be on the north end near Dorch Street. Next slide. This is just showing those two gathering plazas. And so we put the scale of these on here and showed some familiar plazas that you may have visited yourself to give it a sense of scale. So again, that P Street Plaza is about 14,000 square feet, very similar to the same size of the Moore Square Plaza. And then the West Street Plaza gathering space is about 25,000 square feet, very similar to the Union Station Plaza or the NCMA Tree Grove Plaza, with the river birch trees and the water feature. Next slide. This is the circulation system. You can see the spine in orange of the wider main path that takes you through north to south throughout the site. And then we have secondary and tertiary paths that had different experiences as you move through the site, whether it be immersed in the constructed wetland or taking you through the historic walk to the more formal plaza, or even smaller trails where you can climb up relatively small berms to get a view of the skyline to the south. Next slide. These are some of the native plant communities that we really drew inspiration from the natural levee floodplain forest of the North Carolina Piedmont, and using the hydrology as a cue to which plant communities are most appropriate and will thrive in those areas, with a few more formal park-like areas interspersed for gathering, frisbee playing, so that people can utilize those areas nestled within the meandering stream. Next slide. This is just a cross section through the middle of the site, so you can see the relationship of Capitol Boulevard on your right, West Street on your left, the constructed wetland system, and some of those smaller tertiary, secondary, and main paths in relationship to some of the other elements like the historic plaza and historic walk on the left-hand side of your screen. Next slide. This is a view in the constricted wetland system with a boardwalk and overlook area. We feel like this is just a great place to get immersed. These are more experiential. We are still in concept design, so we still have a long ways to go, but wanted to give a feel of what it would feel like to be nestled in those trails. Next slide. This is that more formal Oak Alley historic walk where we imagine there would be interpretive elements to narrate the site's history, great opportunities for public art. And you can see in the background that West Street Plaza with string lights indicating sort of a vibrant, sort of active space that could be programmed. Next slide. Here's just a look on that main trail system that would hopefully be the future Greenway, with the stream on the left, gathering spaces nestled next to the stream and along the path, and then sort of that look north and what that we could imagine that might feel like on that main path. Next slide. And now the fun part. These are the estimated project costs. These costs are pretty conservative. It includes design fees, remediation fees, and construction fees. They're anticipating a 20% contingency at this point in the design process, since it is early on. And with the rising cost of construction, we have 5 years of escalation or inflation adjustments, assuming about 8% annual escalation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gary to close out and then to answer any questions you have.
Hey, Emily, thank you very much. Before we get into any questions the board may have, I'd like to kind of review our next steps. Starting in early February, as I mentioned, we plan to engage the public on the draft concept plan. First off, the design team and I will prepare presentation videos that will be posted on the city YouTube channel for people to view at leisure, at their own leisure. These will be linked on the project webpage. And then on Saturday, February 12th, we will host an informal live open house at the Halifax Community Center. This open house is currently planned to be an outdoor walk-up event between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And so we're allowing for essentially 2 venues to really describe the project to the public, first with the recorded videos and then with that the open house as well. And then along with the recorded presentations and open house, a publicinput.com survey will be live the entire month of February. We will advertise the public engagement using the same channels and methods we used during last year's engagement. In addition, we have over 400 email contacts that we will directly contact. Project boards and hard copy surveys will be posted at several of our community centers in the area. Based on all the feedback received, the project team will then refine the draft concept plan. Then we will bring a recommended final concept plan to you all in the spring for endorsement. If endorsed by the board, we will advance to City Council for final concept plan approval. And then we will be moving into the next phase of stage 2, which is schematic design. And that, I will be glad to take any questions or comments. Thank you all.
Thank you for that update, Emily and Gary. I have to say this has a special place to me because I worked on designs for this almost 20 years ago when in grad school. So Emily, you know, that's a popular site for everyone to design and landscape architecture school. So it's fun to see it coming to life. Anyone have any questions or comments? Unless we want to relook at anything, maybe Gary, you could take the presentation down so I can see people a little better. Thank you. Lindsay, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi. Yes, I was wondering when will the open house at the Halifax Community Center be? Or is that just like tentative at this moment?
Right now we have, I'm still unmuted, right?
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Right now we're looking at February 12th, which is a Saturday. And it will be from 10 a.m. to 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So it's intended totally to be an informal type event. We'll have several staff there from both parks as well as staff from the design team. We'll have boards there. So it's really just a walk-up event for people to come and talk about anything that they want to. And so very flexible.
Beverly, go ahead.
2 points. And one is that interestingly on the schematic, I didn't see any lights on the Greenway there. And I would think this would be a likely place for that to happen.
So your comment is we need some lights on the Greenway.
I don't know, not that I don't constantly contradict myself, but it does seem a fairly logical place. The other thing, and this is more of a big picture process issue, and that is when you're taking into consideration the input, this is such a part of central to the city. And I think it's so important that those who live nearby, not their voices are going to be larger and bigger because of proximity. But that doesn't mean that there should be the determinative voices, because it will be a place that will that'll affect the entire city. Everybody will see it and do that. So just process wise, thank you.
Thanks.
Beverly, I would respond to that. I was just looking at some of the numbers from our public survey last summer. We did have questions in there, basically, how far away do you live from the park? And we did have a considerable number of people who lived outside of the immediate area who responded as well. So I think that we hopefully achieved a pretty broad consensus, I think, across the city, not just people who lived in the immediate area, but the city at large.
Thanks for that. Dave, go ahead.
I think it's going in a great direction. I'm really glad the city opened up the process, and think it's fantastic that we're adding some of the more active spaces, the destination type, the signature moments in the space. Definitely the right thing to do for the area. 17 million seems like a great deal. Let's do
it. Thanks. Brad.
Just briefly, no negatives this time, but I echo Dave's contention that this is great, and it's really wonderful to see it having gotten here. It also seems like a really great space, given the sort of a couple of the zones that are there, to maybe pilot some strategies for sponsorship. Looking ahead to Dick's, and knowing that we're going to have external funders coming in. Here's another space that potentially, you could have sponsors for the Plaza to augment the cost. Some of the bigger names in the city. This is a really great. It seems like because of its location and its prominence, it might be a space where there could be some, at a smaller scale than Dick's, because of Dick's bigness and complexity. You could pilot some sort of sponsorship opportunities for plazas and that type of thing to try those processes out, to try to augment the cost a little bit. Because as someone who lives downtown, I know everybody's going to gripe about more money being spent downtown.
Thanks, Brad. Malay?
Sorry, I was talking on mute. The question I had was, you guys had two plazas there. When you guys were collecting data, was there an overwhelming evidence that suggested that there would be these two plazas, or could one of the plazas be leveraged for something else, like more wetlands or more play area or other activities? Is there a reason why there's two?
Emily, would you like to address that?
Sure. Some of the feedback we heard was just connectivity to the park. We're separated with a rail line. We have Capitol Boulevard, and then we have Wade Avenue to the north, and then Peace Street to the south. And so we wanted to make sure, especially in thinking in the future with how many new residential units are going to be added or have already been added to this area, that it was very important to have access and gathering spaces on the south and the west, just with the density that's happening. So that was one way that we tried to resolve that. Programmatically, could it be something maybe different than a flexible gathering plaza? Absolutely. Right now, it's sort of, we can definitely refine that and start to dig in to more precise programming feedback as the concept evolves. So you could look at them as placeholders, but we wanted to make sure that we anchored social spaces that were visible from a security standpoint, but also large enough to accommodate the density of development that's happening on the west and the south to the greatest extent possible.
I think that's helpful. Thank you, Emily. Similar to Moore Square, are the plazas going to have areas where vendors that are going to be selling food, or is that going to be a design element that's going to be determined at a later point?
Right now, we'll determine that at a later point. We really wanted to embed the most flexibility possible in those spaces. Urban plazas really do need to be flexible to have, gathering spaces for food trucks, which the West Street plaza space could certainly have, or to have outdoor gatherings, performances, maybe low-key, smaller performance. Right now we're just trying to keep those spaces very flexible, also economical. So right now, they wouldn't be as intense as, at least the way they're designed right now, is more square with all of the water features, some of the more intense, sort of more high dollar items, but using them as very flexible urban plazas. So again, we can start to refine that programming and see what people's preferences are as we move forward from this concept design.
Thank you very much.
Lindsay, go ahead.
I have a question actually about, well, this would actually be more towards staff than our consultants who are doing this design here. This looks like a really nice concept plan. And I think I did hear it mentioned, this is another addition to downtown. And so here we've had the Moore Square was redone, and we're looking at Dix Park Plaza and Play, and now there's this, and they look really great. But are there any sort of projections for replacing facilities or other sorts of places with parks like this in maybe North Raleigh or Midtown area for those of us not in downtown to enjoy?
Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take that one.
Yeah.
So it's a great question, Lindsay. So this plan was, we'll say, birthed out of the Capitol Boulevard plan, which is, city government takes a lot of time. Sometimes it's almost 10 years old, I think. And then it was reconfirmed during the downtown plan about 6 or 7 years ago. And the idea, and I think the understanding is downtown is going to densify. And we actually had an absence of downtown public spaces. And this was where we had our fleet services, and all garbage trucks were parked here at one time. So I guess my pitch is, it was birthed about 10 years ago, and it's finally come into fruition to complement the density of downtown. But to respond to the future master plans, as we look to different places in the Northeast or the Northwest in which we remaster plan or we master plan, we'll look for similar type experiences, plazas, and if they have a creek, some adjacencies. But overall, this is probably responding to something that was an idea about 10 years ago.
Can I just really briefly just point out that the Greenway on this site is the north connection to North Raleigh. Right now, if you're in North Raleigh, it is almost impossible to get downtown via the Greenway system. And so this Greenway, the Capitol Boulevard plan, which is great to read if you haven't, envisions a Greenway that connects up to Crabtree, so that if you're in North Raleigh, you can actually come into downtown and bike into downtown safely. And so this is the beginning of that project.
A very ambitious plan, right? Yeah.
Good points. Thank you for sharing those.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions for the team? Great. Well, thanks for coming to present to us. Look forward to seeing the process.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Well, stay safe out there.
All right. Oh, and I do want to mention that if anyone is particularly interested in that project, we do need a couple new people to volunteer to be what are they considered? Stakeholders, steering committee members, whatever they are, our liaisons from the Parks Board to the Devereaux Meadows steering committee, because Brad will be rolling off soon, as he alluded to earlier. And Charlie already is off the board. And Christina, you're still on the Devereaux Meadows stakeholder team. So stakeholder committee, thanks, Gary. So, just keep that in mind. If you're interested, then reach out to Giovanna or myself.
Yeah, Jennifer, what would the timing be for that?
For those meetings?
Yeah.
I don't know. Gary, can you speak to that, or Giovanna?
Sorry,
go
this
ahead.
is Gary. We actually do not have the next stakeholder committee meeting scheduled. I'm assuming that probably what we would do, as mentioned, we'd be coming back to you all in a couple months, going to city council for hopeful approval, and then we can move on to schematic design. When we start the schematic design phase, and it's kind of like starting all over again. We'll go back, we'll meet with city staff again. We'll certainly meet with the stakeholder committee, and there'll probably be a public engagement process throughout the schematic design as well. So it's kind of almost a repeat, probably very similar to what happened during the concept design phase. So I envision at least 2 or 3 more meetings with the stakeholder committee over the next 14, 15 months.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. Next we have the director's report. We don't have any minutes tonight to review.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer, and good evening, members of the board. One council follow-up item for you all. At the January 7th meeting, the council did approve the recommendation of this board for the naming of the Lions Park Gym to the Nate McMillan Gym at Lions Park, and that was unanimous. So we hope to get that going here fairly quick out at Lions Park and get that signage up soon. And hopefully we may have a ceremony for that. And once we do have that scheduled, we will definitely share that with this board. Moving on, a couple of other additional items. The WRAL 2021 Voters' Choice Awards finalists have been announced, or I should say winners have been announced. And in the parks category, Poland Park was voted #1 best park in the viewing area, which is great. And then also Dix Park was actually voted #2. So Raleigh has taken the top 2 spots in the Voters' Choice category for parks. So great news. Also, I also wanted to let you know of a new event that is happening out at Dix Park at the Greg Poole All Faiths Chapel. There is a pop-up museum that opened up on the 15th, and it's hosting 2 exhibits. One of them is called Plantation to Park, and it's presenting the layered history of Dix Hill. And the second is called We Built This, and it's a showcase of Black builders and architects in North Carolina. So the exhibits will run through February the 27th. And basically it's open Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., Saturdays from 10 to 4, and Sundays from 12 to 5. So for more information, you can visit dixpark.org to see the specific dates and times and a little bit more details about the exhibits. I also did want to brag a little bit on our staff. First update comes out of the Recreation Division. Even though we are in the middle of a pandemic, our staff has done a great job, and they have over 950 youth currently participating in the Youth Basketball League. So that is a great program, and to have that such high participation is a testament to the quality of the program and the quality of the staff. So Ken, thank you to you and your team.
I'll say, Oscar, my son was on the waiting list. He didn't make it. That's how popular it was.
Okay. All right, thank you for saying that, Jennifer. And then also big kudos out to our parks team, Sally and her team. As you all know, early January, we did experience some flooding. A lot of it took place on our greenways, and the Parks and Greenway crews were able to get the system back open within a week. They were removing fallen trees. They scraped an enormous amount of silt and mud, broomed trail surfaces, cleaned tunnels, washed bridges and structures. And basically, according to staff, that weather event dumped more debris and silt than they have seen in over 2 years. So even though it didn't seem like it was that big of a storm, probably from comfort of your home, it really did a number on our greenway system. And so in addition to that, our staff did receive a lot of kudos from the public, saying that our parks and greenway system is the greatest use of taxpayer money, which is always great to hear. And once again, reiterates that parks, recreation, culture, resources is an essential service to the community. So kudos to our teams for being able to do that and get the recognition they deserve from the public. That is all I have at this time, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Oscar. Anyone have any, Beverly, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Two things. One, I'll start with I don't look at Nextdoor very often, but I get these emails, and what somebody said the other day, they said, I want to hear what people have to say positive, since a lot of times it's about stolen packages or whatever, lost dogs. And the person who started that thread said, I'll start out with what's great around here, the park system. So I thought that was worth sharing. Second, I was wondering if you have an update for us on the fence built along the Crabtree Creek Greenway along Allegheny.
Yes, actually, I did receive an update. Off the top of my head, I do not have the information available because it's been about a little over 2 weeks that I did read it, but I'll be more than happy to provide a written update if possible. I do see that, I don't know if Lisa may have some additional
I'm still
insight.
here. I'm still
Sure.
here. Unfortunately, it sounds like, well, I do recall a message, and I can pull the email up, but I do recall a message that there was an error in the letter that was written from Development Services, unfortunately. And
I see, Stephen, your hand is up. Did you have?
Yeah, so for notice of violations, we give extensions. And in this case, the owner requested another extension.
Okay,
And
that's what it
that
was.
2 weeks ago. Oh, we'll say a week to 10 days ago. I don't have the exact date because I was looking for the email.
It was on January the 12th.
Okay. But it looks like, I think we're getting a 30-day extension, correct, Oscar? For them.
That is correct.
And so that would be the update. I would recommend you ask the same question in our February meeting, because that would be at the time they would have had to have responded to our request to remedy their what they've done.
Yeah, so they basically had requested that extension to have a survey completed, and so
That's correct. Yeah.
planning development did confer with the city attorney's office, and they basically allowed that. So as Stephen mentioned, ask us that same question in February, and hopefully we'll have a different update at that time.
Yeah, the new start date was, new compliance date was January 12th, and so 30 days from January 12th.
Okay. Thank you for that update, everyone. Yeah.
Good question, Beverly.
Yep. Thanks for asking it, Beverly. That's good.
I'm out there.
All right. Well, next on the agenda are our committee reports. So I'm going to start with Parks Committee. It's Christina.
Guys, it's Christina. We met as a Parks Committee at the beginning, the first week of January, and we had a great meeting. We met with Raleigh Youth Council. We had a representative from there, a representative from the, I'm going to mess up the board. I think it was the Hispanics and Immigrants Affairs Board. I'm not sure. You can correct me if I'm wrong. And then we had some community representatives from the Hillsborough Street Corporation or Community Service Corporation. And we're just all brainstorming what we want this, what I'm calling, it hasn't been named yet, but what I'm dubbing the Parks Board Welcome to Raleigh series. We solidified the months that we would like to do it. We like to do April, May, June, take off July and August because of the heat and no one really wants to be outside in those times, and then resume in September and October. Hopefully including a lot of different community organizations as well as BPAC and city affiliated organizations, so that we can be a resource for residents who just moved to Raleigh. So we can say, this is what our park system is and what it has to offer. I know that in some of the meetings, staff had talked about board participation in as we near the election, and we can talk about the parks bond, and it gives us a space to be in interactive with the community. So we have a lot of ideas coming and would love your input if you have any pointers or questions about what this can be, but I'm really excited to what it looks like right now. We are solidifying what community centers, because we'll do the 5 districts, A, B, C, D, E, maybe not in that order, and partner with community centers that are doing things. So probably Abbott's Creek in April for Easter events. We were talking about method days, although that's in August, early September, we're not sure yet, and making this really highlighting districts and community centers within those districts that might not otherwise be highlighted. So I think I've hit on all the topics of what we discussed, but if I've missed anything, anyone who's there, please feel free to jump in and chime in. But please reach out to me if you have any questions.
Thanks, Christina. That's great. Great work. Next, Fred Fletcher. Lindsay.
Hi, everyone. So we actually met in December, and I'm pulling up my notes for you. Mary Owens on staff's been hard at work getting things in order for this. So appreciate her hard work. She sent me an update today that the nomination window it's a volunteer awards. The nomination window closes tomorrow at 5 p.m. and Mary's met with she's got the acronym here, Duke Energy Center for Performing Arts, to discuss layout, COVID protocols, and catering. And just to note, the award ceremony would be in May. And that date is pulling up. I have it written down, but not in front of me.
10th.
Here. The 10th. There we go. Thank you. Yes. The May 10th. We are going to meet virtually for our selection meeting, reviewing all the nominations on February 8th. And we have some former board members joining us to lend their passion and enthusiasm as well. So excited to have some guests join us then. Trying to think what else. So once the nomination window closes, Mary's going to organize all the nomination forms and supplemental folder materials into a folder and send them to us. I'll get us a Zoom link and we'll have a powwow talking about the awesome people who are making our parks and community centers come to life. And not sure what else to share with you, but that's our update.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Thanks.
Is it too late, Lindsay, if anyone else wants to join that selection committee?
Oh, we welcome anybody else if anyone would like to. We've got 5 of us from the current board and then 2 former members, and I've invited 1 other former member waiting to hear back. So it's fun. It's
sounds like a
and
good
like
group.
Beverly pointed out earlier, it's nice to talk about some good stuff and hear about the good things that people are doing in our community. It's really inspiring. So yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Beverly, yeah, go ahead.
This is a tangent from that, but and maybe directed to Oscar. Is there a system in the park system for recognizing great things that employees do?
Yes, I think we've had, and I may have Steph kind of chime in here, but I think we have had some staff recognition programs, and then also our marketing and communications department has also done, like in the past, Parks Praise. Whenever we get positive feedback from the community on particular staff members, they'll be highlighted through our website and social media platforms and so forth. So at the same time, we're also at this time we're also doing like our Parks People pieces,
Yeah,
and I think you've probably seen some of those, and that's really kind of like, you know, along the lines of folks that do great things as well every day. And so that's kind of an ongoing piece you probably have been seeing here the last couple of months. But I'm gonna, you know, let Scott kind of chime in here on some other stuff that we've done in the past.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Yes, and Ken may also chime in. Our 2 divisions that have done what's called Kudos Awards. And that's when we receive emails from citizens or other staff members about a great experience they've had. And Ken will read those out during our monthly staff meetings, you know, just to let people know that who got the Kudos Award for the recognition they received from their peers or from citizens. And it's usually pretty fun. You know, it kind of helps those folks understand that they are valued by their peers and the people they serve.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Great. Okay. Greenways Committee, Beverly, do you have anything else to discuss, or did we beat that
I think
one
I've
to
seen
death?
that presentation 3 times, and like I said, I've read that daggum report.
Hey, I just want to take a moment to say thank you, Beverly, for really reading that carefully and being the eyes and ears of the board, because I know the rest of us didn't read it as carefully as you did, and I really appreciate it, you know, just everything that you flagged and pointed out along the way.
Well, it's because I love using it and because I see so many other people who love using it. So
No,
it's a pleasure.
Point of privilege, Chair. There is nothing more than we like questions. It's deflating when we get no questions, especially when you have a multiple 100-page report. It's good because we want the board to read things, and we know it takes time, but yeah, I want to thank Beverly as well. Our staff has talked to her a lot, and I know we've had lots of exchanges, but they're like, it's great, someone's interested, because sometimes they're like, well, we did all this work, we had all these meetings, and no one's asking questions. So thank you for everybody's inquiry tonight, especially Beverly. So.
Yeah, it's been great to get Beverly texting and calling me saying, go look at this page. What do you think? And yeah, it's great. Good.
Thank you, Beverly.
Sustainability, Wildlife and Urban Trees Committee, Marcia?
Yeah. Well, we met last Tuesday on the 18th of January. And one of the things that we're doing, the board is doing, and it's under the auspices of the SWAT committee, is a tree of the year program. And Zach Manor and his colleagues have come up with a program for receiving nominations via photo by citizens about trees that they particularly like. And then there'll be a voting process, and the tree would be honored for Arbor Day. And the honor will be having a sign that says that this is the tree of the year. And the tree can be a city street tree, or it can be in somebody's yard, but it has to be visible to passersby. So it couldn't be a tree in the backyard. So anyway, that's underway. And we'd like to ask the Parks Board members, if you know of a tree in your neighborhood or a park that you visit that you'd like to nominate, nominate for consideration, please do so. Oh, I see Zach's here. He can pipe up and make comments too. Anyway, so this is a pilot project to do maybe something like a tree of the year.
Marcia?
Yes.
How does the committee review those, whatever is sent in for the nominations? Do they review those and select the winner?
Yes, we would have or at least the committee, you know. It's a good way, if you want to be involved in that, join the committee. We'd love to have you. Zach, would you have your hand raised? You want to chime in, please?
I didn't want to steal your thunder, but I can answer any questions, or if anybody's got any detail concerns about the program. But you were knocking it out of the park, so you know I'm here to help as needed.
Yay! I appreciate it. Anybody have any questions for Zach about this? Okay,
I'm
so
gonna start looking for trees on the Greenway.
yay, that's it, Beverly. Thank you. Exactly. This is some really exciting news. We've been talking about the need to have a tree canopy study done, and there are federal funds that have become available that the county's going to do. The whole county will do tree canopy studies, and this will give information about the shade and temperature differential, and reducing carbon emissions. And so that's going to start this coming spring. Am I reporting that right, Zach? Okay. Scott is continuing to work on the submission for the joining the Biophilic Cities Network. And so that's makes us happy that that's moving right along. And I think that's hits the high spots of our meeting. We welcome having other people on the board to join us.
Thank you, Marcia. That's great. You guys are doing great work.
Thank you.
Let's see. Next, we have Deborah Meadow, but I think we've heard about that. I don't think there's anything else there. Christina has her hand up. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. I just wanted to mention that in our last sustainability committee, we brought up, as with the board, we've talked about invasive species and things. And I was hoping and wondering if this year, like we did last year as a board and went into Walnut Creek wetland, did a cleanup, if we could possibly gear our group activity, whatever that is, to invasive species. Because I know for me and for a lot of people on the committee, it was a really powerful presentation. I've put it on different meetings that I've been a part of, and it's really something that a lot of the community loves to hear about and loves to talk about. So just for food for thought, just the thought that I'm throwing your way, y'all decide, but I just think it would be a great initiative that the Parks Board is part of in helping to control our invasive species population and make it better. So thank you.
Libra Goss and her team would welcome that.
Yep.
I'd like to say that having Lisa and her to do with the presentation that she did to the Sustainability, Wildlife and Urban Trees Committee, to do that for the whole board. It's really powerful and something we need to know about. And we need to be able to talk about it with other people in the community. I've talked about it a lot and talking with some people about how to collaborate with various groups to undertake a project. It's a very informative.
Thank you, Marcia. Okay. Great. Let's see. So moving on, committee liaison reports now. Arts Commission, Carol, you have a report?
My aim is not very good tonight. Okay. The Arts Commission, arts is just on fire. There's just so much going on. But I'm not going to list everything. It's impossible. So I've just got some circled things, items from my notes from half an hour after the SWAT committee finished. I was on the Arts Commission meeting. So they're working on a new Medal of Arts ceremony. Now, to me, that means they're going to have a different format altogether, or they're going to do it in a fundamentally different way. Otherwise, wouldn't they say just this year's Medal of Arts ceremony? There's now a public art and design board, and there has been for a little while, but I think it was new last year. And they are getting into a lot of things that we might be concerned with, like public art and so forth. So I'm going to be understanding that relationship a little bit more. And this is in the category of y'all come, if you want, to these different opportunities. And I'll send out a link so we can bookmark it. I know Lindsay got real excited when I had a list the first time, and she gave it everybody she knew, and I think she was individually responsible for increased attendance and awareness of arts in Raleigh. So I'm keeping up with that. The North Carolina Museum of History is having an African American cultural festival. I did not write down the date. I suspect it's next month. The Ballet Hispanico is at NC State University. I definitely want to go to that. That's on February the 11th. So that's coming right up. On the agenda for the Arts Commission was the John Chavis exhibit, art and design exhibit for which we had the dedication recently. I thought that was good. They were pushing it too. And I've got 2 pages of events here. Just dance, festivals. I told you about the festival already. The Harlem Quartet, theater, visual art, voice. They're on fire. So would you like me to send a list of them all to you for distribution by Giovanna, or you would? Okay, I'll do that. That's the end of the report. Thank you,
Carol. Thanks. Christina, BPAC, unless there's any questions for Carol, sorry. At this point in the agenda, I start moving fast. Okay, go ahead, Christina.
There's not an update. We have our next meeting for BPAC on Monday. They were able to put me on as a panelist, which helped out so much in the last meeting for me to be interactive with them. And this Monday, we're going to be going over the Greenway Master Plan. So this will be my 4th time going through it. It's going to be great. I'm going to love every second. I know Beverly asked for the time, so Beverly's going to be there too. We're going to knock it out of the park because we're going to see it. We're going to know this like the fact. I won't know it as much as Beverly does, but I'm excited for that. And I will keep you updated. They do want to be more involved with the Parks Board. So there are talks of sending their own liaison so that they can be more present. I know that they're already part of the Greenway Committee, but they really want to keep in contact with us. So I'm really happy about that. That's it though. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay. Sally says there's no report for the City of Raleigh Historic Cemeteries Commission. They meet next week. Dick's Leadership Committee, I don't have a report. The next meeting is next week. Historic Resources Museum Advisory Board, no report. Next meeting is next week. They took December off. So chair reports. So the big thing I wanted to stress and talk about is that this is the final official meetings for both Kendall and Brad. But we don't have replacements for them. We do ask that if you can, that you continue to serve until we have someone to replace you. If you can't, I understand. I just have a few words and then I'm sure Giovanna may have something to say. Kendall, thank you for your passion, your wisdom, especially in these past challenging couple of years as we've navigated issues of equity and disparity in this country, the city, and within our park system. Brad, thank you for your guidance and for your wisdom as you gave your input on the political system and how to best advocate for parks and greenways. You will both be greatly missed, but your advice will help guide our conversations moving forward. Giovanna will be mailing you both your official plaques to thank you for your service to the Parks Board. Thank you so much. Feel free to unmute if anyone wants to say anything.
I just want to say thank you both to Kendall and Brad. And like you mentioned, there have been no nominations, and so we expect to at least not have goodbye today, but hopefully goodbye maybe next month. So that hopefully y'all can kind of stay with us one more month, grace us with your presence and wisdom, and then hopefully we'll have a more of a formal goodbye for both of you. But on my behalf and the rest of the staff, thank you all so much for your service.
Yep.
I would like to say something.
Go ahead, Carol.
A bit brief. Kendall, I can remember you for many things, but I remember back when we were meeting in person?
Barely.
And there were pictures being taken. And I'll probably remember after the meeting what the occasion was. But you stood up behind me and you put your hand on my shoulder. And I just felt all this warmth and kindness flowing. And I just want to say, I'll always remember that. And Brad, your incisive intellect and your way of speaking and your masterful handling of the meetings with your chair really impressed me. And I wish you to live long and prosper.
Thank you for kind words.
Do either of you have anything you want to say? Brad's shaking his head. Okay.
I think I did earlier.
You've said your piece.
I just to say, I've enjoyed the ride. I appreciate it. It seems like everybody's doing a lot of great work moving forward, and hopefully you guys will continue that journey. Hopefully you guys will continue the journey around racial equity. I think that is important that we don't talk about it, that you're about it. I appreciate Giovanna sending out that link. That's not nothing about me, but it's about the work that has always been important, not just last 4 years being on this board. That's in life. And if no one pushes that, we're just going through the formality. So what does that look like? So hopefully you guys will strive to continue to do that. And now that I won't be on the board, I will even push harder now in my new position. I understand that. That goes from all races and background. That's who I am. That's how I'm wired. And that's who I will be. My CEO didn't put me in a position for no reason. That's why I'm there. That's not truth, that's facts. So I appreciate you guys. Jennifer, thank you for your leadership. Lindsay, thank you for pushing those agendas and everybody else. And Oscar, just enjoy you and your leadership just coming in, doing this work. So that's all I gotta say. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, Kendall. So one thing I need to clarify, I guess, is our next meeting is still virtual, correct? Okay. And I believe that council will be deciding that in February, if we might be going back to in-person, and we'll be needing to figure out if there are virtual options, you know, if that does happen. So, but for
That is
now,
correct.
next month is virtual.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's all I had. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to share or discuss? We've had
Jennifer, can I, well,
Oh,
I was
I
gonna
see
just make,
Lex. Okay, sure. Sorry, Oscar.
oh, we'll have Lex go.
Okay, I'll be very brief. I just wanted to say I'm glad to be back. As some of y'all know, in the meantime, since last time you saw me, we've had our second child. So Theo turns 2 months old next week. So thank you for your grace while I've been away for a little bit. And Kendall, thank you very much for your sincerity during the time we've overlapped on the board. It's really been a guiding light in keeping track of the things that are the most important and making sure that we're serving the most vulnerable. So really appreciate all of that. I think all of the conversations we had back when we were in person, if anybody can remember it, as was discussed when we were talking about the bond proposals, just everything that you were keeping in focus there was so important. And I've always appreciated it. We'll always appreciate that. And Brad, you are a steady runner your entire time as chair, and I appreciate you were the chair when I first came on the board, and I appreciate you making sure I was educated and just generally for your leadership during your tenure. And so thank you so much to both of you.
Thanks, Lex. Lindsay?
Similarly, thank you all for your grace when I took a break as well, since our baby arrived in October. And I will miss you both, Brad and Kendall, and appreciate the gifts that you have each brought to this board and community, and your friendship as well. So I'm going to see you again in person somehow. So stay well, please.
Thank you. Oscar, did you want to say something?
It was really more of kind of like a house cleaning message, but with the impending weather we're going to be having overnight into the next couple of days, just want to let you all know that our park and recreation facilities will be closed Friday and Saturday due to the weather, and that announcement went out today. Fortunately, it looks like we're not expecting as severe a storm as was being originally forecast, but just out of an abundance of caution, which is probably an overused term over the last year and a half, we will close facilities for Friday and Saturday, and make sure that we have staff on standby in case we do have to address any potential tree issues or anything else like that. So I just kind of wanted to keep you all aware in case you haven't heard yet.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, well, having completed the agenda and hearing nothing further, I proclaim this meeting adjourned. Thanks. Have a great night, everybody.
Have a great one, everyone.